Good day everyone, Dr. Polaris here. During the Triassic, the Archosauriformes continued to expand their range and diversity, producing a whole host of bizarre forms. Most of these were carnivores, ranging from apex predators in the case of the Erythroseuchids to the small active Euparkeria. Beginning in the Middle Triassic, other families were developing adaptations to a semi-aquatic lifestyle and would have resembled small, strange crocodilians if we were to see them alive. These were the Proterochampsians, a lineage that were more derived than Euparkeria, but less so than the Phytosaurs or the true Archosaurs. Exactly which genre were members of Proterochampsia has been a subject of ongoing scientific debate, but the most recent studies suggest that two families were present, the Doswelliids and the Proterochampsids. Both groups contain semi-aquatic forms, with levels of suitability for this niche varying depending on the genus. The earliest forms appeared during the Middle Triassic, roughly 237 million years ago. The Doswelliids were endemic to Europe and North America, being for several decades represented by just one animal, the eponymous Doswellia. However, during the 2010s, additional genera have been described, and the total count has now risen to possibly 7. All members were semi-aquatic and somewhat crocodile-like, with a high walking gait and eyes and nostrils positioned at the top of their heads. Their bodies were long and slender, with derived forms possessing elongated, narrow jaws with sharp, slim teeth. The peculiar basal form, Cleavea, had a short, rounded skull instead, suggesting that early members of the group were more lizard-like in appearance. Also, many later species developed widely splayed, heavy ribs, which were probably useful in keeping the animals buoyant when submerged in water. This, along with the presence of extensive coverings of osteoderms along the back and tail, are strongly indicative of water-going habits. Given that most Doswelliids were not particularly large, this armour plating would have served as a form of protection from larger predators, such as Phytosaurs or Rauisuchians. Doswellia itself is the best known, having been first described in 1980 and is known from fairly decent remains. Native to North America during the Late Triassic, it measured up to 2 meters long and possessed a number of bizarrely derived traits. The skull is low and elongated with a narrow snout and wide temporal region behind the eye sockets. The ribs were wide and flared out to the sides, giving the animal a wide and boxy torso, while up to 10 rows of osteoderms ran along the back and tail. Jaw movement was restricted to a simple up and down snapping motion, while the muscles at the rear of the skull allowed Doswellia to open and shut its jaws with a good deal of force. This produced a weaker bite than in modern crocodilians, but nonetheless suggests similar feeding habits. This, along with the pointed teeth, long snout and upward pointing eyes of Doswellia, support the idea that it was an aquatic carnivore. However, due to the strong limbs, the animal was likely not solely aquatic, perhaps being somewhat similar to the Cuban crocodile of today, which spends a good deal of time on land. Possible prey would have included fish, crustaceans, small reptiles, and other animals. Today, only one species is recognised, with a possible second species being reassigned to its own genus, Rugorhynchos, in 2020. Another close relative, Jaxtasuchus, was very similar in appearance, being a heavily armoured semi-aquatic carnivore. More basal Doswelliids, while also being semi-aquatic, were somewhat different in appearance. Cleavea was the best known of these and is unusual in a number of ways. Recovered from multiple specimens found at the famous Late Triassic Ghost Ranch site in New Mexico, we now have a good idea of the life appearance of this genus. Cleavea individuals had short snouts with large fang-like teeth and long bodies with small limbs. They were completely covered with bony plates known as osteoderms, which came in several different varieties distributed around the body. These odd traits have made Cleavea difficult to classify, and its position in phylogenetic analyses have tended to vary. In 2016, a close relative, Proterochampsidae, was found in China, and suggests that these two genera may have been outside of Proterochampsia, but it will likely take future studies to solidify this position. Regardless, Cleavea grew to at least 1.2 meters long, with a body plan reminiscent of a lungfish, with a sausage-shaped body deep, vertically flattened tail and short limbs. The skull was rather blunt and somewhat bulldog-like, with large eyes and a pair of protruding fang-like teeth that fulfilled the role of canine teeth in mammals. These features suggest that the animal inhabited inland rivers and lakes in the arid semi-deserts of western North America during the Late Triassic. Prey would have included fish, crustaceans, and small amphibians, while Van Clevia's watery home would have protected it from predation by the large pseudoseuchian Postosuchus and early theropods like Coelophysis with which it shared its environment. Meanwhile, the sister group to the Doswelliids were the Proterochampsids. These were overall quite similar to their cousins, and were endemic to South America during the mid to late Triassic period. Some basal forms, such as Proterochampsia itself, resembled a cross between the earlier Erythroseuchids and the later crocodilians, possessing huge skulls for their overall body size. However, these were narrow and triangular in shape, not tall and boxy, while their limbs were decently strong and elongated. This suggests that these 3.5 metre animals were at home in both land and water, using their powerful jaws to snap up any smaller creatures that they could catch. Once again, Proterochampsia possessed extensive dermal armour on its back, likely serving as a form of defence. Other genera retained a similar appearance. The related Pseudochampsia was smaller, and possessed a somewhat dog-like appearance. Like its cousin, its snout was elongated and narrow, while the rear of the skull was expanded and housed powerful jaw muscles. This skull shape is also seen in the unrelated Choristoderans, suggesting a possibly comparable diet. However, Pseudochampsia's limbs were much longer and better adapted for terrestrial locomotion than in those reptiles. It is possible that the animal spent a great deal of time on land, galloping after small synapsids, rhynchocephalians, and juvenile archosaurs, shredding them with its small, curved teeth. Another somewhat dog-like genus, Carenosuchus, was present in the same region of Argentina. Unlike other members of the family, Carenosuchus lacked a dense covering of osteoderms, but still possessed narrow jaws, small sharp teeth, and elongated limbs. The animal lived during the Middle Triassic in a dry, semi-arid environment alongside the avimetatarsalians Louisuchus, Marosuchus, and Lagerpeton. The presence of a secondary palate, as in modern crocodilians, suggests a semi-aquatic lifestyle, while the limbs indicate an animal that could come onto land and hunt there during the dry season. A close relative, Gualasuchus, was present at the same site and was very similar to its cousin in overall appearance. In all, Proterochampsians can be compared to the smaller crocodilians alive today, such as the Australian freshwater crocodile and the Cuban crocodile in terms of ecological niche. Although they often lived alongside the equally Suchian-looking Phytosaurs, these reptiles were generally much larger and not as well adapted for movement on land. It is possible that many Proterochampsians were in-between animals, exploiting both the rivers and the open fern savannas in order to hunt for prey. If attacked by larger predators, their extensive back armour would have offered them a measure of protection. However, despite this flexibility, much like the Erythroseuchids before them, the Proterochampsians eventually succumbed to extinction due to competition from more derived true Archosaurs during the Late Triassic. The group did not make it to the end of the period, dying out roughly 216 million years ago. It is possible that the Pseudoseuchians replaced them, although we cannot be sure of this. Regardless, these were yet another lineage of Triassic Archosauriform oddities that was somehow both familiar and strange, both crocodile-like, yet also somewhat dog-like, and overshadowed by their larger, more spectacular relatives. Hopefully, this video has served as a good introduction to them. Thanks for watching, everyone. Next week I'll be covering the Uintatheres, a bizarre group of early herbivorous mammals from the Paleocene and Eocene. See you again soon. Cheerio.